Hello, my name is Marlon McCurdy Jr. I'm a third year computer engineering major from Atlanta, Georgia. And today, for my project, I will be going over the economic oppression within the Hebrew people and its relation to the Great Migration. So, a little background on the Hebrew people. These were people that first appeared in Mesopotamia. They later ended up migrating from place to place, with Canaan being the first. And Hebrew people were said to be God's chosen people. So they built temples and altars as a form of worship to Yahweh. And Hebrews were enslaved in Egypt, and they were later freed by Moses. And then to compare that to African Americans, this was a term used to describe American people of African descent. During this time of the migration, one of the largest enslaved groups. African Americans were one of the largest enslaved groups in the USA, and these people were freed and entered a new struggle to find industrial works during this time period of 1916. They still persevered to push through with building their legacies, although they were faced with difficult times. And so, for the Hebrew oppression, native Egyptians were enslaved by Hebrews and later freed by Moses, who was the ruler at the time. They faced several other civilizations that were still being conquered. For African American people, there were 6 million African Americans, and they moved across the country. This period, um, this period occurred from 1916 through 1970, when African Americans migrated from rural southern United States to the urban Northeast and Midwest. And this was caused because of racial segregation in the USA. So the Great Migration was when African Americans were faced by unsatisfactory economic opportunities and harsh segregationist laws. So during the migration, African Americans began to build a new place for themselves in public life. This included actively confronting racial prejudice, as well as economic, political, and social challenges to create a Black urban culture that would exert enormous influence in the decades to come. And so the historical arts, the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant is a gold-plated wooden chest that it houses two tablets bearing the Ten Commandments that were given to Moses by God. So, according to the Hebrew people, the ark was constructed by the Israelites while they were camping in the Sinai desert after they fled Egypt. So, this chest was often used to worship the gods, to worship the Hebrew gods, which was the way of the truth and the life. And so basically, its overall importance, the Black experience during the Great Migration became an uh, important for the agricultural movement known as the New Negro Movement, and later, as we know it today, the Harlem Renaissance, which had an enormous impact on the culture of the era. The most significant resemblance of both the Hebrew oppression and the Great Migration was regardless of what both groups went through during the time, they were still able to find good within the struggles. So the Hebrews being able to use the Ark of the Covenant as a way to worship God through the midst of all the civilization and turmoil that they were going through, while the African Americans, on the other hand, were able to take such a demographic impact and still find the light within it, which was a new activism in which, like I said previously mentioned, later became known as the Harlem Renaissance. Um, and so, yeah, they used that to continue to build their cultures. And so, yeah, that's the correlation that I find between something ancient as the Hebrew oppression and then something recent in today's world as the Great Migration.